Now, in this section dealing with knowledge and feeling-based abilities, I want to actually combine three separate talents. The reason is that two of those talents, although separate, are very much related. They're interconnected. And the third very much associates with them, although oftentimes they're completely separate. So, of course, the abilities I'm talking about are that of premonition, precognition, and of course, dreams in all its forms. So what are these things? Well, we all kind of know what dreams are, but what is premonition? What is precognition? Now, the distinction between the two is actually a matter of what we get. As an example, under premonition, it's more about images and feelings and impressions of what's going to occur in the future. Now, with precognition, the difference is it's about raw information. There's no feelings, there's no pictures, we just know. So it's the difference of, say, the clairvoyant talent versus the intuitive talent or the clairsentient talent. But that's the distinguishing difference between the two. But they're basically both about future events, events that haven't occurred yet. Now, this doesn't mean that we all live a defined life and we're all on a path and it's not changeable or alterable. What it is these dreams or these images and impressions, and often dreams, are coming in an attempt to give us something to work with for two reasons. One, to help us become better prepared and trusting of these talents, or to maybe change them, to deal with the facts that we might actually be able to alter them. It doesn't mean that we always can, and it doesn't mean we always should. The problem is that we don't really know. So, like I said, some of them could be coming just to test you, just to see where you are and how well you can handle it. Now, there have been some TV shows showing people with some of these abilities that have seen things that have been rather painful. Might be, in the case of one, the destruction of a plane full of people. And, of course, quite emotionally devastating. Now, some of these things, in that case, he wasn't there to prevent it. He had no capacity to prevent it. What he was there to do was actually, in my opinion, pave the way to accepting of this talent, to show to others that it's there and it exists so that we could develop more later. And of course, because it was such a devastating event, it had a greater impact, and so more people found out about it. So that's kind of the way, in my opinion, it worked. Now, I'm not saying that we don't live a defined life. What I'm saying is we don't really know. We know, and we've experienced for most cases, that there is a guiding force. As we develop our own talents, we tend to feel guided towards others. As we live our life, we tend to feel guided towards certain things. Why that is, at this point, is irrelevant and it doesn't matter. But the point is, in my opinion, there is a guiding force and it's there to help us grow and evolve. And premonition and precognition are precursors to us understanding more about ourselves and what we can do, as well as learning to trust something that is well beyond ourselves, but that actually has a way of checks and balance. After all, with premonition and precognition, as the future becomes the present, there's things that we can see. There's things that we can say, oh, that is what I saw, or oh, that is what I felt. So there is a system of checks and balance, which typically doesn't occur with any of the other talents. So to develop both of these talents, all we can really do is trust. There's no specific skills or abilities or tests or techniques that we can use to develop them. All we can do is when we get feelings and impressions and images that pertain to the future, accept them for what they are and wait and see. That's important. Now, the reason I've included dreams in the same category is because more often than not, premonition and precognition manifest in dreams. That isn't to say that all of our dreams are prophetic. It simply means that oftentimes it uses that medium to get the message across. Most times it's doing that because while we're dreaming, we're effectively more open. We're willing to receive more information and knowledge. Now, most dreams don't contain hidden messages or hidden meanings or have anything that we really should be analyzing or understanding. The average basic dream serves one simple purpose: to process information that we're backlogged on, to catch up with all our thoughts and thinking processes and the things we haven't dealt with. It's simply the body's way of dealing with that which we haven't dealt with. Not much more to it. But occasionally something will sneak in that's more than. That's where these are connected. So when we get these impressions, all we can really do is the same thing, trust. Now, to develop the ability of premonitive dreams or precognitive dreams, we actually have not so much more control over the ability, but we have more control over our willingness to accept the information. We have more control over how well that we'll receive it. Now, the easiest way to do that is actually to become better at accepting our dreams. Some people have kept dream journals, they write their dreams out when they wake up, things of that nature. They're very useful talents if you have anything related to do that. The more that you keep the journal, you can actually go back and look through once in a while and see, has this occurred? Did this seem real? Did I figure out what this meant? And you actually have that system of checks and balance that sort of say that yes, this is working, and yeah, it was real. So most of this stuff, that's all we can really do. So we could do the same thing with the waking versions of these abilities and keep a journal, but that's up to you. The dream aspect, however, is where I would recommend more doing that, because as I said, the wake version, it's too easy to confuse with all these other talents, so it's better not to really give it too much focus on premonition or precognition, but just to accept that I've got this impression, I've got this idea. By all means, write them down and keep a journal, but don't get caught up on the success or failure. With the dream side, because there is more of an ability to separate it from the other talents, that's why it's okay to keep it a bit separate. After all, we tend not to have intuitive dreams because that falls more under the title of like precognitive dreams, premonitive dreams. Although, as I said, it's a fine line kind of between the two. Now, it's also important that when we dream things like that or have the impressions, what makes them precognitive or premonition is how far in the future they are. As an example, if I feel something and it happens a minute later, that's kind of a fine line between premonition and intuition. The two blend. Now, with the dream, if I dream something and wake up and it's occurred, there's that same kind of gray area. So to really define the two better, a premonitive dream would require a span of time. Precognitive, the same thing. So if it happens in quick succession, it might be premonitive, but it probably is more intuitive or one of the other talents. If it happened 2 days later, it assuredly is more precognitive or premonitive. So that's why it's important to not label things too much and not get caught up on the titles, because sometimes the area between the two is pretty vague. And in fact, you could actually have some overlap, that you're getting both, getting impressions of what's coming now as well as what's coming later. So with premonitive and precognitive dreams and ability, that's the best thing you can do. Just keep in mind that it occurred. Feel like keeping a journal by all means, and once in a while go back and just rethink it and see if you did hit anything. Now, when you start to hit things, don't get caught up on the fact that, oh, now everything you dream is real. It isn't. Like I said, most of the dreams and even some of the daydreams that we have, they're just our body's way of processing through too much things that we haven't processed. And a lot of times it will include things that occur because we know they're going to occur. As a perfect example, if we know that we have a test coming up and we know we're going to pass, we're not getting premonitive impressions that we're going to pass. It's simple logic. We can look at how much we know, we can look at how much we've studied, and we can get a fairly good impression. I don't need to be psychic to know that I'm going to pass if I have a huge history of passing. It's simple logic. So that's the basics of these abilities. So because there's a lot of gray area, you have to be a little bit more careful, and that's why this topic got so much discussion, because it's a lot more confusing. So again, don't get caught up on the labels, just accept that what you feel happened. And whether it gets checked or not, whether you find out it's real or not later, doesn't matter. What matters is that you're trusting yourself with this information or these impressions without having a way to guaranteed back them up or know that they're real. So now, in the next section, we'll get into the last 3 of the abilities that we'll discuss in this topic. Hang with me.